Hey everybody, welcome to our webinar on helping children overcome ADD and ADHD in 3 steps. My name is Dr. Blaise Ryan, founder of Parent Learning Club and author of Democratic Parenting, and it's a real pleasure for me to share this information with you. On this webinar, what you're going to learn is the root cause of poor attention and hyperactivity, and the 3-step system that I've developed to overcome ADHD and ADD naturally without taking drugs. We'll also discuss the Chinese medical perspective of poor attention and hyperactivity and how parents, teachers, and doctors commonly misdiagnose childhood stress disorder as ADD and ADHD. We'll also discuss the risks of taking Ritalin and other psychiatric drugs. First off, what I want to do is tell you that what I'm going to share with you is a simple process for transformation, but it's not a quick fix. Okay, there are no pharmaceuticals and no chemicals involved, but you do have to take action to see results. If you listen to this webinar but you don't take action, you might find it theoretically stimulating, but it's just theory, and therefore you won't see the results that these simple yet profound 3 steps can bring you. If you want change, you have to create change, okay? And we'll go through in this webinar the exact steps that you need to follow in order to create the change that will give you the results that you're after around helping your child focus more and to calm down so that inner peace is more a constant state of their being from which they can then absorb and take in the information that the world is giving them around them, and to let that settle deeper down into their memories so that they won't have as big of issues in school and other areas where their attention is being demanded. So who am I? What makes me an expert on ADD, and why should you even listen to me? My name is Dr. Blaise Ryan, as I said, and I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine, which means that I treat the root cause of disease, not just the symptoms. And when I became a father myself, my training led me to question the standard approaches to parenting, from the old school authoritarianism approach to the modern day permissive approach. And I thought to myself, might there not be a better way, a simpler, less stressful way that's easier on both parent and child? And all my research led me to found Child Brain Health, which is dedicated to supporting and protecting the integrity of our children's brain health, and ParentLearningClub.com, which is an online membership for parents who love to learn and to share and to grow. I'm also the author of Democratic Parenting, which is available on democraticparenting.com or amazon.com. And this book contains most of the research around the child development and child psychology and the parenting methodologies that we've found to be truly effective to alter a child's challenging behavior in soft and natural ways through strengthening the communication and connection with the adults and the child. I'm also a high school dropout, so I know the challenges that children are faced with today when they struggle in school, just as I did. And when I dropped out of school, I didn't think very highly of my intellectual and academic capacity, but from there I traveled all around the world for 6 years, and through my travels I learned many languages all by myself, and eventually I went back into medical school and graduated at the top of my class. And it was through my travels in the world where I regained the confidence in my ability to learn, which I lost in the traditional public school system, which caused me eventually to drop out. So this is important for everybody to really take into consideration, that when a child struggles in school, it's not the end of their life. And there's still plenty of opportunity for them to develop their ability to learn in their own unique way. So what is this thing they call attention deficit disorder, and why is hyperactivity so commonly associated with it? So how is ADD diagnosed? I'm going to share with you the professional criteria for diagnosing ADD and ADHD according to the American Psychiatric Association's manual called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, shortened as DSM. So the fourth edition of the DSM diagnoses ADD based on these following criteria. This has to do around inattention. 6 or more of the following symptoms of inattention have to be present for at least 6 months to a point that it's inappropriate for their developmental level. So first, often does not give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes in schoolwork, work, or other activities. Often has trouble keeping attention on tasks or play activities. Often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace. And this is not due to oppositional behavior or failure to understand instructions, which means that they don't finish or follow through these instructions because they simply forget about them. Their attention goes elsewhere. They often have trouble organizing activities and often avoids, dislikes, or doesn't want to do things that take a lot of mental effort for a long period of time, such as schoolwork or homework. And they often lose things that they need for their tasks and activities like toys or pencils or books or assignments or their homework books. And they are often easily distracted. They're often forgetful in their daily activities. And also, there's symptoms relating to the hyperactivity. And again, 6 or more of these need to be present for at least 6 months, again, to an extent that it's disruptive and inappropriate for their age. They often fidget with hands or feet or squirm in their seat when sitting still is expected. They often get up from their seat when remaining in seat is expected. They're often excessively runs about or climbs when and where it's not appropriate. Adolescents or adults may feel very restless, and they might not. It's rare for an adult to climb on the couch when they have ADD, but it can definitely happen. They often have trouble playing or doing leisure activities quietly. They're often on the go or act as if driven by a motor. Often talks excessively. They're impulsive. They will blurt out answers before questions have been finished. They often have trouble waiting their turn. They often interrupt or intrude on others, like they butt into a conversation or in games. So 6 or more of those have to be present for at least 6 months. So we just talked about A, which had to do around inattention, and B, around hyperactivity. So that was the first point to diagnose ADD or ADHD accurately. And this is the professional standard way of diagnosing ADHD. The next point is that some of these symptoms have been present before the age of 7. So according to this, we cannot accurately diagnose a child under the age of 7 with ADHD or ADD. But we have to notice that these symptoms were there to the point that it's causing impairment in their ability to function before the age of 7. And some impairment from the symptoms is present in 2 or more settings. Okay, this means that if a child can't focus at school but has no problem focusing at home, then they don't qualify. The inattention has to be present in at least 2 locations or 2 settings or more. It can't be location or situation specific. There must be clear evidence of clinically significant impairment in social, school, or work functioning. Okay, so this means that we have to prove that somehow these symptoms are impairing their ability to function in social circumstances or in their school or in their work. The symptoms do not happen only during the course of a pervasive developmental disorder, schizophrenia, or other psychotic disorder. So that means that these symptoms can't be better accounted for by another mental disorder, okay, like anxiety or dissociative disorder, or mood disorders, that kind of thing. Okay, so these are the criteria that have to be met in order for any doctor or psychiatrist to accurately diagnose someone with the ADHD or ADD. And based on these criteria, we can we can identify one of three types of ADHD. We have the combined type, where there's both inattention and hyperactivity have been present for at least 6 months, or predominantly inattentive, or predominantly hyperactive and impulsive. So what we can see by this diagnosis is that it's impossible to find something that is causing ADHD physically. That means there's no physical tracers, no way to find chemicals that are deficient or in excess in the brain. There's no way to actually physically see if a child or an adult has ADHD or ADD. It's a purely symptomatic diagnosis. And that's a very important point for us to consider when we're looking at alternative ways to treat this. Because there is no physical evidence or physical way to diagnose this issue, it's purely symptomatic. That means that if we can approach the symptoms and work on the root cause behind those symptoms, then we can effectively cure the problem, and these symptoms will dissolve and the child's focus will return and they'll be able to relax more in their body. And we'll discuss how to do that. First, let's talk about the benefits and downfalls of the two options available to us. We have natural healing strategies or pharmaceutical medication. Typically, the majority of doctors and psychiatrists will recommend pharmaceutical medication. However, more and more doctors are beginning to turn towards other types of therapy like play therapy or other types of supportive models that can be really effective for children to help them with the root cause behind these problems. So let's look at the consequences for medicating children. First, there are dangerous and sometimes deadly side effects with these drugs. Next, children also learn to rely on drugs to cope instead of creative problem solving or reaching out to their community or developing a depth of self-knowledge in order to control their tendencies and learn to reduce the stress or whatever it is causing these behaviors behind the scenes. Also, a lot of evidence points to long-term addiction to medication for children who take these types of medications. The other thing that we need to consider is that children can easily have their self-identity harmed by being labeled with a mental or psychological disorder. Now, of course, this isn't always the case. Many children are resilient enough and they're raised in homes and environments that are supportive enough where it might not affect their self-identity. However, it can create a bit of a limit or a ceiling or excuses for them to turn to as to why they might not achieve their full potential, right? It can create a subconscious or even a conscious limit on their ability to achieve their full potential. And also, there is no long-term research supporting the benefits of medication. And again, I've done a lot of research into this, and all the long-term research, especially we have some now on based from Ritalin and some of the older type of medication, and most of these point to very negative side effects, and none of them show any supportive benefits for the long term. We also need to be very aware that these pharmaceutical drugs do alter the brain. How most of them work, like Ritalin and Adderall and Concerta and many of them, is that they inhibit the uptake of serotonin or dopamine into the brain, which then causes more serotonin and dopamine in the brain. And this is the same thing that antidepressants typically do. But what happens then is that the brain responds because it knows that there's more serotonin and dopamine in the brain, because it's not being taken back into the brain. Therefore, it reduces production. And then, of course, this alters brain chemistry. Also, Ritalin has been shown to reduce blood flow in the brain by up to 25 to 30%. It's also been shown to shrink the brain too. And adults who have taken Ritalin long term as children have reported chronic insomnia, depression, reduced sperm count, as well as many, many more symptoms. And I'm not going to go too far into this, and my intention here is definitely not to make any parents who choose medication to feel guilty. that is the farthest thing from what I want to do. What I want to do is just put these facts in front of parents, because typically the negative side effects of taking these drugs are kind of brushed over by doctors and not talked about very much. But it is important for us to consider this, because children's brains are still developing, right? They're growing and developing. And when we start to give them chemicals that affect their brain directly, then we're creating real changes in their brains and in their bodies. So we need to be aware of all this. And what you can do, if you're interested in this, is do your own research. And there's lots of research available on the internet. I can recommend two great authors. One is Howard Glasser, that's Glasser, and also Dr. Breggin, that's Breggim. Both of these authors have written several books and done lots of research on the negative side effects of ADHD medications, as well as present their own opinions on various alternatives to these drugs. So the benefits of choosing the natural healing direction is that it's safe and healthy, and it focuses on strengthening communication skills, connection with peers and environment, physical health, coping mechanisms, and healthy outlets for energy and stress. And this fourth point is absolutely critical, because typically it's stress which is behind these symptoms, or children just don't have a healthy outlet for all this energy they have in them. And we know that kids are like little batteries, right? They're filled with energy. You know, how many times have we thought, if we can just find a way to bottle some of their energy and take that ourselves, then we'd be a-okay. And also with the natural approach, we treat the root cause of the problem, not just the symptoms. Okay, our intention here is not to put the children in a zombie-like state, like a lot of the medication does, so the symptoms just go away. What we want to do is treat the root cause of the problem. Why is a child acting like this? And what can we do to reverse that on, again, the root causal level? Because that's where we're going to affect real and permanent change. And that's also how we move towards a sustainable long-term solution, instead of the quick fix that medication offers. So the problem around ADD and ADHD is a societal one, and we really need to address this as a society to move forward in the future towards a much healthier and balanced approach to life and development and education. You know, historically, parents have never faced the same challenges that we as modern parents face today. Just the amount of communications that we receive and send through the internet or through our cell phones is staggering. Imagine what our ancestors just a few generations ago would think about the technologies that are in front of our faces, and how fast life goes, and how much we're doing and how much we're communicating. They would find it hard to, they wouldn't even be able to imagine it. It's hard for them to fathom. And we really have to question a lot of the usefulness around the technologies that we have, because a lot of these were created to give us more time, right? To more convenience, to make things more efficient. Yet all of us find ourselves with less and less time, and busier all the time. And it seems like almost the more of these fancy technologies we get to make our lives easier and more efficient, the busier we get and the less time we have. And so that's just one piece of how modern society is changing parenting, is changing the world, is how much it's affecting our home life and our stress as well. Now we need to also look at the public school system. It's an outdated model, and it's based on the industrial age. We're thick in the information age, and that's very clear by what we see on the internet and all the technologies that are coming out again to support the information transfer that happens via the internet. But the public school system has not evolved in decades and decades to support the massive shift we've gone through. And the reason I'm bringing up the public school system is because most often the whole problem around ADD and ADHD comes up in the school or educational setting, right? When the children are having a hard time sitting still in school or focusing, that's when the whole question arises. So we need to look at the public school system, and we also need to look at our whole society. What happens after school? Where are these children going? What's the whole purpose of the school system? Well, it's to bring them into life and to be effective and contributive adults in the whole system of society. And the school system that was based on the industrial age was preparing people to go straight out of school with a diploma, and then they would get a job, and then they would have that job for life. But that no longer exists. Currently, the statistic around the job force is that the average adult holds the same job for 2.5 years. And that's a modern statistic I think it's for the United States, but it probably is true for any developed country at this point in time. So we can see that our workforce has drastically shifted, where 60, 70 years ago, the person would hold a job typically for the average person would hold it for their whole life. Now it's for 2.5 years, but yet our school system doesn't support or give the necessary tools to help our children cope and be prepared for that world that they're going to come into. And considering this, the strongest skills and the most important skills that we can give our children are adaptability and creative problem solving and communication skills, right? All of these are not really taught at the forefront of our education system. So, children are being drugged just to conform to an educational model that doesn't support modern needs. Just a couple of months ago, I was reading an article where a doctor, I think he might have lost his license or got fined because he was found to be medicating children on an ADD diagnosis without going through that full diagnostic criteria that I outlined based on the DSM criteria. So he got caught. He was giving a lot of drugs to these kids and not doing the full diagnosis, and he admitted to it, and he actually gave a reason for it. He said, listen, the school system doesn't support these kids, and the only way that they can go through it is for them to be medicated because they just can't sit still through it. And people don't want to address the real problem, which is the educational system, because it's too big of an issue to address. So they just want their kids drugged, and he says, that's what I've been doing. So here we have a doctor openly admitting to be drugging children to conform to an educational model, again, that doesn't support the modern needs of children or adults. We also know that each child learns differently. Some children really thrive in the public modern education system, right? They love it. They love the tests, and they do really well on it. The drawback is that what I see is that a lot of these children end up basing their self-worth on how well they do in school, because they end up being at the top of their class and they get a lot of recognition from that, both in the school and at home, that they end up, again, basing a lot of their self-worth on their production, on their product, which, has its drawbacks, because when they do fail or when things don't work out, it can move into self-identity crisis. And I actually treat these patients as adults in my clinic. Sometimes when they come in, there's layoffs or something happens, or they make a mistake, which many of us wouldn't think is a big deal. It's just a mistake, but for them it's a crisis, because for so long they've created their whole identity around how perfect they can perform a task or do a test, or how well they perform on anything. So, by all means, it's great for people to strive for excellence, right? It's something, of course, I encourage, because, we can get a lot of satisfaction out of doing a job well. So, and that's a wonderful thing for us to experience. But we don't want to base our whole self-identity on what we produce. And we need to really, our school system and our teachers need to be adaptable enough to engage each student to learn and thrive in school. I struggled in the public education system as a child and as a teenager, But I do remember some teachers that really engaged me in some classes, and I did well in those classes. I found them interesting and I got great marks in them. But other classes, the teachers just didn't engage me and I had a hard time getting it. So what we need to do moving forward is for our teachers and our schools to be adaptable enough to meet all of our children's needs based upon the ways all different children learn. Also, saying all this about the school, the home environment is the foundation to a child's mental health, and we all know this. So that's what we're going to focus on primarily in this webinar. So what's the Chinese medical view of attention and of hyperactivity? Well, we look at the being as having three parts: the mind, energy, and the body. And these are known as the three treasures. These three treasures are interconnected, interdependent, and interrelated, which means we cannot separate the mind from the body. And we cannot separate the mind and the energy and the body, and all three, they're interconnected and interlinked. Which means if there's an imbalance in one, the two others are also out of balance. So the mind has to do with our attention, our awareness, our thinking, our judgment, our memory, our luminosity, and our energy has to do with like our vitality, our willpower, the intensity of how we do things or how we express. And it's also connected to our sense of connection and our zest for life, our enthusiasm and movement, right? And we can see that this is so accurately expressed for children who are impulsive or hyperactive or can't sit still, right? The energy is slightly out of balance, right? It needs to express, something needs to happen on the energetical level. The body has to do with our substance, right? Like our meat, our physicality, our essence, our physical health. And we can also talk about the body in terms of our greater environment, right? And it's often in the Eastern traditions, it's referred to as our temple, the temple of the soul, or the temple of the spirit is our body. And it's, you know, it's our home. It's what we live in. You know, from the moment we're born till we die, it is our closest home, is our body. Now, like I said, these three aspects, the three treasures of Chinese medicine, the body, the energy, and the mind, when they're balanced, then focus and presence is natural and easy. It just happens. Children or adults can be focused and present, right? But when any one of these is out of balance, then all of them are affected. So if your mind is thrown out of balance because of something you heard or something you saw, then it can affect your energy in your mind, right? And if your body's out of balance, maybe you ate too much sugar, or you haven't eaten enough and you're hungry, or you've eaten too much and you're bloated and you're digesting, then of course it's going to affect your mind and your energy, right? Or maybe if your body's tired because you haven't slept enough, or maybe your body's just needs to exercise, it needs to move and sweat, then your mind and energy will be affected by that as well. Okay? So what's the root cause of ADD and ADHD? Okay? We have two main symptoms associated. It's poor attention, inability to focus or concentrate or to keep the attention on something for an extended period of time, and hyperactivity or impulsivity or fidgetedness, or, you know, just movement, inability to just relax and be still and at peace in the body. So what are the cause of these two issues? Well, the way we approach behavior, and we're dealing with behavior now because it's attention and restlessness, is that there are three reasons behind all behavior or misbehavior, right? When it's not behavior that we want. And we can associate these three reasons for both children and adult behavior. So the first reason for any type of behavior or misbehavior is legitimate unmet needs. Okay, so we have three levels of needs, right? Again, following the Chinese medical view, needs for our body, which is like, you know, need for proper nutrition, need for sleep, need for exercise, needs for our energy. And these have to do a lot with our social needs, because it's through our social connections where we get a lot of energy and enthusiasm and that drive, right? But again, the body and mind needs feed into the energy needs a lot. And then we have needs of the mind, like need for attention and need for autonomy and a variety of different needs. But I won't go into these right now. There's a whole webinar I do on these 15 essential childhood needs, which fall into these 3 categories, but it's too lengthy to go into in detail. So I just wanted to cover these briefly. And next, the second reason for misbehavior are role models, right? Modeling behavior around us. And there's 6 types of role models that influence children. We have the primary role model, which is the parents. And then next we have siblings and other family members. As we step outside the intimate family circle, then peers at school or friends, we can be influenced by their behavior or their personality traits, or other adults like teachers or people in our community. And then next, as we step outside our human influence level, we go more into abstract influences that children can model behavior from, like characters in books or stories, or which is big nowadays is television and media, video games and movies, right? All of these are ways where children are influenced by external behaviors, right? And it's quite common for children to see a type of behavior on TV or in a movie and then to try it out to see how that works on them. In a study that just came out again a couple of months ago, I heard about this on the radio, and it was called Mean on the Screen, I think it was, is this study. And it was done by researchers. And what they did is they monitored television and movies that are marketed towards children. And they wanted to find all the types of mean type of behavior that was being shown on the television. And they found that 94%, yes, 94% of all these shows which were being marketed towards children had not only mean type of bullyish behavior being presented to them, but this type of behavior was actually being rewarded. And sometimes the rewards were, very subtle in terms of just social approval, that kind of thing. And a lot of the behavior was very subtle as well, like just stuff like isolation or, just remarks here and there, which weren't that obviously mean, but it was enough mean for these researchers to classify it as such. So we need to be very careful about the type of media exposure and the influences and the role models that are being shown to our children through these external media. And the final and third reason for behavior is stress. Now, stress is what I would say is the most common reason for ADD and ADHD behavior. And we'll discuss why. First, let's look at the psychology of childhood stress. So children are 100% dependent on adults for their survival. So anything that threatens or undermines their sense of connection with an adult, a parent, or any caregiver will trigger their instinctive fight or flight response for survival. And the reason for this is that, again, children are dependent upon us for their survival, and that means their sense of connection is the way through which they are fed and housed and taken care of. So whenever that sense of connection is threatened, then that stress response kicks in. So anything like criticism, which causes the disconnection, isolation, timeouts, or other types of isolating circumstances, or even confusion causes them to feel disconnected and will trigger that fight or flight response. And there are 4 causes of childhood stress, and this I go into great detail in my book, Democratic Parenting, again, which you can get on Amazon.com or democraticparenting.com. I go much deeper into childhood stress because about 80% of the time it's the cause of all types of difficult behavior in children. And with ADD and ADHD, it's a real big cause. So the 4 types of childhood stress. First, we have aggressive stress. Now, this is the stress that we can tangibly see as aggression, like when a child gets yelled at or spanking or hit or anything that's violent or aggressive towards a child. That type of stress it can really affect them. And then there's passive stress. So passive stress is different from the aggressive stress in that passive stress is the pressure from unmet needs. that means if a child's need for attention goes on too long, that means if a child's need for attention is unmet for too long, they will begin to feel anxious and stressed, and then they will start to act out in ways to get that need met. And that's why they often say that, you know, bad attention is better than no attention at all, in a way to explain a naughty child's behavior, because we can see that they're trying to get attention even though it's negative attention. Well, yes, we need to respond to that by giving them positive, loving attention so that they don't have to go to those ends of acting out in negative ways just to get the attention that they need. So anytime an unmet need goes on too long, then this passive stress will build, and the child's behavior will begin to bend towards meeting that need. Then we have situational stress. And this is the type of stress that's nobody's fault, caused by life changes like moving, changing schools, divorce, death of a family or death of a pet, natural disasters, or hearing about natural disasters or wars on news and such. Next, we have birth stress, which is caused by any type of stress during pregnancy, during birth or labor, or postpartum as well, like prolonged labor or birth traumas. Those types of things will all fall under the birth stress category. So how does stress lead to the poor attention and hyperactivity? We need to really look at this because, again, typically stress is a big factor in actually every single case of ADD and ADHD I've ever seen. Stress is a factor, and there's different levels, right? We can just have this continuous pressure, again, like that might come up from you know, a passive type of stress of unmet needs that are just starting to weigh down and cause a child to become stressed. Now, chronic stress or even acute stress triggers what we call the fight or flight response. And what happens is that these stress hormones like adrenaline are released into the body, and this causes the human to gives them a jolt of energy in order to fight a danger or to run from it, to flee from it, okay? And this is an instinctual response given to us to survive dangers in our environment, all right? And all animals have this whenever our fear or a fear comes up or our survival is threatened, then this is triggered and will react from that. So these stress hormones are released into the body, and these stress hormones actually cause our brain nerve cells to shrink, and they inhibit memory, clear thinking, focus, and concentration. It also increases our anxiety, our restlessness, and fear. Okay, so we can see here all of these things that these stress hormones cause are associated with ADHD, right? Poor thinking, inability to focus or concentrate, restlessness, right? These are all the stress hormones that are in the body. So what's the solution? How can we reduce and heal stress? And how can we meet our children's physical, mental, and emotional needs? It's simple, but it requires action. Just like I said before, I'm going to show you these simple 3 steps that you can follow to make this transformation happen for your child and in your home, but it does require action. So the first step is what I call reduce, okay? What we want to do is reduce the excess, whatever it is in the environment, internal and external environments of our child that is causing a child to not be able to focus or to become restless and anxious. We want to reduce those causes, okay? So anything that's overstimulating, right? If there's just too much stimulation, that will put a child on edge and inhibit their ability to focus. Distraction, right? What takes away concentration? What is it that takes away our attention but distraction? So anything that causes distraction, we want to reduce it. Hectic schedules, that's a big thing, okay, that causes stress and anxiety and really takes away from our need to process and to rest and rejuvenate and relax, right? We do best in following natural cycles and rhythms of up and down, periods of activity and passivity. That's the natural balance that we want to achieve. But if our if our schedules are so hectic, it's always active, 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 without any downtime, without any time to process our experience, then a lot of our needs go unmet and the stress level gets quite high. We want to reduce toxins and allergens in our environment and in our foods. Many children who have a wheat or a gluten allergy react very clearly to these. When they have a piece of bread or something, they start bouncing off the walls and they can't concentrate or anything. So we want to reduce these. And if you suspect that perhaps there might be a food allergy with your child, then you can get them tested, or you can just at home, just research common food allergies in children and do some elimination and testing. So if you think wheat or dairy might be a cause of your child's issues, then what you can do is reduce those from their diet for a couple of weeks and then reintroduce one of them and watch how your child reacts. And you'll be able to see very clearly, if you don't give them any bread or any wheat for a couple of weeks and then you give them a little bit, you will see if or if not they react or act differently after that point. Sugar and processed foods. I see so often where parents, they give their children cereals that are just chock full of sugar. Really, there's just a bowl of sugar and highly processed carbs and preservatives and chemicals in this cereal bowl, and then they send them off to school, and then they wonder why they can't sit still at school. Well, with all the sugar going through their system, it's no wonder, right? And there's lots of studies that show how processed foods and additives in food can really inhibit a child's ability to concentrate and to thrive academically. So I think there might even be some of those research facts in my book, Democratic Parenting, around processed foods. Chemical exposure. Okay, there's a lot of chemical exposure in the modern living. Anything from a lot of the preservatives and carcinogens that are added to skincare products, like even just hand soap and shampoo, bubble bath. A lot of these types of products have known carcinogens, which are cancer-causing ingredients. And we know that the skin absorbs chemicals because that's how a lot of medications are given now, through patches, where the skin absorbs it directly into the bloodstream. So a little bit of this chemical exposure, it's not a big deal, but when it starts to come from at every angle, even clothes have chemicals that can be harmful for us. And nowadays, all clothes and mattresses and bed sheets, in order for them to be sold, they have to be sprayed with fire retardants. And these fire retardants have been found to have different bacteria will actually feed on them, and the waste that's caused by the bacteria can be toxic. And it's even been found in some research to be associated with sudden infant death syndrome, was these chemicals on these new mattresses and sheets. So these are things you can research about in your home, and these modern types of things which can all add up to causing this chemical exposure, which can inhibit a child's health and well-being. Next, we have electronic media exposure and screen time. And these are really, really big because a lot of these are very stimulating. And they're basically created in order to capture and to keep a child's attention. And we see it more and more often where a child's attention is just glued to these screens, whether they're watching TV or a movie or playing a video game. And these programs and games are created, again, to keep their attention locked. And there's been studies showing how the screen changes on TV shows and in movies is much, much faster than it was just 10 years ago. And that shows that it's picking up speed in order to keep our attention locked, because we're starting to get more and more immune to these to television as we get more and more used to it. So it just starts going faster and faster, and the scenes become more and more intense to keep our attention locked. So by reducing electronic media exposure and screen time, and I'm talking about all screens, from smartphones and computers and televisions and and all type of media exposure, we want to reduce that. And you will see by reducing that, it will make a big difference in your child's behavior and their attention and their ability to be calm. Because when we get into, you'll see in step 2, we can start to replace the time that they spend on the screen or playing video games or whatever it is, with other things which help increase their attention and get more into their bodies and to increase the health of their body. Because again, we want to balance those three treasures we talked about: the mind, the body, and the energy. So all of these, this three-step method is created to really help balance those three treasures, where a child's attention can thrive a lot more. We also want to reduce clutter and excess, because clutter and excess pulls the attention. If you live in a cluttered place, or your child's room is just overflowing with toys and games and stuff, and it's just a big mess, then from the moment they wake up, it's just their attention is all over the place because there's stuff everywhere. So we want to reduce that. Just if your child doesn't playing with a lot of toys anymore, just go in there with a box and take out everything that your child's not playing with, and you can put it away for now. And you want to do so, of course, with sensitivity, because you don't want to put away something that maybe is special to them and cause a big issue with them. But but the more you can reduce the clutter in your home, and then the better their attention will be, and the more calm they will be as well. And again, we want to reduce pressure. Anything that increases pressure leads to an increase in stress, which ultimately we want to reduce the most, because any type of stress will again cause that fight or flight response and cause your child to come out of their thinking brain into the amygdala, the reptilian brain, which is acting out of survival and can't concentrate. That part of the brain is not created to concentrate, and it's not created to sit still. Its whole function is to survive. And so as soon as you increase the pressure and the child moves into the state of stress, then it's that part of the brain that takes over, and therefore you can't reason with them. And they, as much as they try, they're unable to control that energy because their energy just gets out of balance. So this is step one. We want to reduce anything that causes the distraction or takes their attention away or increases the stress. And these are some important points for areas that you can and things you can reduce. Step two, we go the opposite. We want to increase. Okay, so now that we've decreased and removed the excess or what is not necessary or the things that are causing distraction and stealing their attention, now we want to increase and bolster and tonify whatever is weak or deficient. And the name in itself, attention deficit disorder, tells us that attention is deficient. So first we want to focus on increasing attention. So the best way to do this that I know of is a method called play attention time. And chapter 9 in my book, Democratic Parenting, is devoted specifically to this method. And by far it's the best one that I know that you can do to increase your child's attention. The great thing about this method is that it also meets a variety of your child's essential childhood needs at the same time. So it's really effective, and I highly recommend practicing this regularly, and it will definitely improve your child's attention. You also want to increase periods of unscheduled time. That means time in the day where there's nothing scheduled, where your child can just relax, just lie around on the couch, read or play or have a nap or just do nothing. But this specifically doesn't mean that they can watch TV or play video games, because again, we want to decrease that media and the screen time exposure in step one. So this unscheduled time is really just kind of like a downtime that they can do anything. And this will go a long way in helping them process things, right? Because the need for processing is really an essential need that we all have. And when our schedules are too busy, we never have that downtime, and balance is impossible to achieve. We want to increase nutrition. Nowadays we have so much abundance in our grocery stores, and obesity is an epidemic right now, especially childhood obesity. And a lot of that, actually, the childhood obesity is caused by stress as well. And I talk about that more in the webinar on childhood stress disorder. But the interesting thing is that even though there's so much food, a lot of this food is nutrition weak. It's empty food, right? Like the carbs and the processed food. So what we want to do is increase the nutritional value of our children's food. And I'm not going to go too deep into the nutritional side because there's lots of stuff that you can find online, and even in my book Democratic Parenting, I do have a short chapter on nutrition and ways to improve that as well. And increase exercise. Again, these children, a lot of children who I see who come to me with ADD or ADHD, or sometimes their parents that come to me, when I start to question them about their lifestyle and their daily habits, I see that they're getting very little, if any, exercise, and they're spending a lot of time sitting on the couch watching TV or doing nothing. But exercise is a need that we all have, and especially children, right? They have so much energy, and that they're made to run around and play. And when I grew up, we went out at the house. If we didn't have school, it was outside in the summertime from morning till dinner time, or we'd come home for lunch maybe, but we'd be outside playing all day. And that's just the best, most wonderful type of exercise you can get. Unfortunately, today, a lot of us live in modern urban cities, and we don't have it's not as available to us to go play outside in nature. So what you can do is find some great parks that you can just bring your child to and let them run around and play for a while. And bring a child's friend so they can play together for a couple hours, and bring a book for yourself so you can just sit back and read or whatever, or get involved and play with them. If not, you can enroll them in a variety of different sports programs like gymnastics or other types of sports where they can really get into their bodies, get a really good sweat, get breathing heavy, and get that heart rate up, and push their bodies to the limit so they burn that energy. And that will really help, again, on two levels, to balance the energy and balance the body. And then their mind will really thrive, because the mind will have a healthy and balanced home where it can live in. So definitely increase the exercise. We also want to increase the sleep. Recent research has shown that most children and adults are sleep deprived in the modern world. And again, this comes back to us being too busy and overstimulated, and just trying to fit in too much rather than just relaxing and enjoying life and just living more natural rhythms. So what we want to do is increase your child's sleep. The easiest way to do this is to just go to bed earlier. Oftentimes, we're already getting up really early to get our children to school, and for us to get to work on time, and morning can be a big issue in and of itself for many parents, is just dealing with that whole all that intensity in the morning, getting everyone out and fed and their lunch ready and dressed and everything. So the easiest way is to just go to sleep earlier. And I know that a lot of parents struggle with getting their child to bed on time, or sleep issues. So again, I recommend my book Democratic Parenting, and there's a whole chapter on smart sleep in there, where you can learn some good tips and ways to develop rhythms and routines into your nightly schedule that makes going to sleep just a lot more easier, and it just flows without having that struggle and those oppositional behaviors come up when it comes time to start to get ready for bed. Also, we want to increase our child's successes and our encouragement. And again, we want to encourage the child, the being behind the child, not so much what they produce and the results, right? So we don't want to focus so much on praising what they do, but more on who they are and how they're doing it, right? And again, this bolsters them as a person, so that regardless of their ups and downs, their successes and failures, their achievements and their mistakes, they're going to continue to feel good, and that sense of encouragement will carry them forward through the downs as well as the ups. If we only praise them on their successes, and give them rewards when they do well, then it creates a type of anxiety on what they're doing, because they start to fear not doing well for fear of not getting the praise or the reward. So we want to encourage them as a person, as a whole being, regardless of how well they do on things. And that way, when they fail or when they make a mistake, they'll be able to get up much quicker and move forward and take it more as a learning experience. If people start to feel bad about themselves for making mistakes or failing, then they're not actually learning from their mistakes. They're just kind of, stuck in the face value of the mistake, and they're not seeing it as a gift or an opportunity to learn, which is really what we want to develop, because that way we can move through life and achieve greater things, and much easier, because life is full of ups and downs, right? That's a natural order of things. A natural rhythm is up and down, up and down. So the more we can feel good the whole way through, the better. And that's really the biggest thing we want to increase for our children, is the feeling that life is good. Because personally, for me, what greater gift can we give our children than the sense or the feeling that really life is good? And sure, it's not always pretty, and sure, there's lots of things that need to be improved, and it's still in a state of continual evolution, and we're definitely not arrived at the utopia that we all hope for and dream for one day. But the more that we can feel deep down inside that life is good, the more that we're going to act from that place rather than fearing that we might not get something, or trying to always get ours from a perspective of scarcity. We want to move more towards that, a feeling of inner abundance, that life is good and that love is abundant, and that regardless of the ups and downs, everything is okay. And also, we want to increase healing from stress. So there's 8 different natural ways that we can heal from stress, which often I call our inborn repair kits from stress. And this is in Chapter 5, Democratic Parenting. So definitely you want to increase those opportunities for your child to just drain out that stress, and that will help them move through the issues of impulsivity and hyperactivity, and help them focus their attention better. And above all, we want to increase a child's sense of connection, because this is really the shortcut to influencing anybody and any type of behavior, is that connection. Because as I talked about before, a child knows instinctively that their very survival depends on their connection to adults. So the more connected they feel, the happier they feel, the more relaxed they'll feel, and the more buoyant and resilient they will become. So that's step 2 of the 3-step process. Step 1 was to reduce the excess. Step 2, increase the deficient. Now step 3, we're going to bring it back to you as the parent, as the adult. You are the change for your child. As we talked about before, under the 3 reasons for behavior, the second reason we talked about are role models. And you, as the parent, are the primary role model. So you want to be the change you want to see. Become an example of good attention. You are your child's primary role model. So however you act, your child will model. If you're distracted and you're anxious or you're stressed, then of course your child's going to start to act distracted or anxious or stressed, because they're modeling the example that you're showing them. So you want to be that example that you want them to follow. And if you're not satisfied with the example you're showing now, if you take an honest look and you think, geez, I'm just, I'm always on the run, as if there's a motor, and I am distracted and I forget things commonly, and I'm stressed and overwhelmed, and then take a step back and, and look at your life and make the changes you need to take and the changes you need to make in order to become the model you want to be for your children. Because the opportunity for you to be that role model, especially during their early development, is a short opportunity. You have a fleeting window of chance to be the influence for them, to set the foundation for how they will respond to the world and how they will act in the world. So if you want your child to be happy yourself, right? Ultimately, what do we want more for our kids than for them to just be happy? But how can we expect them to be happy if we're miserable ourselves? So stop stressing and start enjoying your life. Get happy and feel good, because when you start to feel good about life, so will your child. So, there's some real simple steps to do this. Just start, counting your blessing. Take care of yourself and pamper yourself. Give yourself all the love you need. Take the me time you need. You know, that's something I see again and again and again with parents, is that, you know, they're giving and giving and giving to their children and to their family and to their work, and then they just come to me and they're completely drained and completely exhausted. And I ask them, well, when's the last time you did anything for yourself? When's the last time you scheduled in some me time for you to take regularly? And they look at me like I'm crazy, or like I've just said something that they've never even considered. But that is so important for us to take the me time, that's time for ourselves, where we can fill our own cup, to fill our own emotional gas tank, so to speak. Because, you know, it's only after we fill our own cup will we have the energy and the reserves to give to another, to give to our children, right? If we completely exhaust ourselves, then our patience is going to be thin. Our, you know, and we're going to start to react impulsively and emotionally ourselves. And then our children, again, are going to model that behavior. So they're going to start to act impulsively and react emotionally, and they're going to be less and less inclined to respond situationally based upon the needs of the moment, and again, react more out of their emotion or their stress. So you are the change, and that's step 3, is to, if you want to create a real permanent lasting shift in your child's attention and awareness and entire state of being, and in balancing their body and their energy and their mind, then you, as your child's primary role model, need to balance your own body, get the exercise and the sleep and the nutrition and the social connections you need, and balance your energy to fill your emotional cup, and to bring back that deep sense of unconditional loving patience, so you can sit with your child and give them really good focused attention, and balance your mind so that attention is clear, your thinking is clear, your judgment is good, and you start to respond more situationally rather, again, than react emotionally. And when you do balance your body and your mind and your energy, and you start to be that example of good attention, your child will begin to emulate and model you. Now, of course, this isn't the be-all, end-all. This is the step 3, right? Because you still have to go through the first 2 steps in order to really help reset your child's entire state of being and their world, pretty much, to help bring them back to a place of good attention and relaxed state of awareness. So remember, you know, don't rush it. What I'm talking about is real change, and change takes time, it takes persistence, and above all, it takes patience. You know, there's the story of the farmer who wanted his plants to grow faster, so he started going out every day and he'd pull on his plants a little bit in order to make them grow quicker. But this poor farmer ended up with all his crop dead because he pulled them so much that he pulled the roots right out. And that's an important lesson for us, is that pulling on the plants doesn't make them grow any faster. We have to be patient with this, with our children. And our children really are like plants, right? We want to reduce the pressure rather than, you know, pulling on them all the time, increasing the pressure. And we want to take our time with this change. And that's the only way that this type of thing, this change, can be systematic and effective over the long term. And use Democratic Parenting, this book that I wrote, to help you on your journey. And I'm not saying that just to sell my own book. I'm saying that because it's a really great resource for you. There's lots of methods in that book. There's 14 specific methods that are really the best methods that I've found after years of researching everything I could on child development and psychology and different parenting methods. These 14 methods in the book are the best ones I've found to help make natural and harmonious shifts in your relationship with your child and in your home, to help them really get deeper into their attention and to relax more and to keep that stress level low, so your child's natural light and brilliance can really shine through. So also, if you want more support using these 3 steps, we're developing an online home transformation program that will lead you through these 3 steps, step by step, and that will make this transition easier. This is called the 1-2-3 ADD free Home Transformation Program. And below you can get more information on this, or go to 123addfree.com, and then you'll be able to sign up for this program, and we'll walk you through each of those 3 steps I showed you: the reduce, the increase, and you being the example. And we'll go through the checklist so you know exactly what to look to reduce and where you can increase. And there's a whole support system built in there to help you, again, guide you through this transition and make it much easier. So I hope you've really enjoyed this webinar. Again, it was a pleasure for me to share this information with you. And I know because you've watched this whole thing, you're one of the most amazing parents or teachers on the planet. And your children are truly blessed to have you in their life as a wonderful role model. So every day of your life, give your children all your love, and give yourself that same love too, so you can fill your cup and really be present and available for your children when they need you. And together, we will build a brighter future.